Hi, welcome. Karis to you. This is Tuesday, the 12th of May, 2026, and I've just been looking through some Facebook messages and I noticed some messages that were about Paul being superior to Peter. Now, I've heard many people trash Paul and say Paul is not biblical and Paul was a false Christ, etc. But I had not heard anyone trash Peter in respect of Paul previously, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do because Peter was one of the 12 actual disciples of Jesus who were directly um, in relationship with Jesus, and Paul came afterwards. Paul, in fact, before once the Jesus had ascended, Paul was um, abusing Christians and charging Christians for breaking the Jewish law and so on. He was acting like a cop until he had a spiritual meeting with Jesus in Acts. And these people, one of the things they trash is Acts, which gave the beginning of Paul's ministry. So it's made me think about the Bible and how people will trash part of the Bible, one part or another, and ignore things. Some people say that, oh, you've got to live by the Torah, the Jewish law, the Pentateuch. And that is, well, Jesus said it was impossible to live by the Torah. And the Torah was only a light showing the coming salvation in Jesus. And Jesus didn't come to take away the law, but he came to fulfill the law, to give validation and completion to the law. Not taking it away, but being the ultimate sacrifice that that law requires. So if you're not living under Christ's sacrifice, under the grace given by God, and you're attempting to live by the law, then you're denying the sacrifice of Christ. So you can either live by the law or live by Christ. Now, if you're living by Christ rather than by the law, it doesn't mean you are lawless. In fact, you are even more compelled to avoid sin. But do you make sure that your crops are all grown in a single field, for example? Because under, I think it's Leviticus 19:19, it says that when you sow a field with two different kinds of, it's against the law to sow a field with two different kinds of crop. So does that mean a veggie garden under the law with lettuce seeds and um, tomato seeds and whatever other seeds might have grown into different kind of vegetables is illegal under the Jewish law? Well, yes, it is. So therefore, you either grow your own vegetables or you risk breaking the law by not knowing whether your vegetables have been grown in the same field as other vegetables. It's really, really difficult. And that's just one of thousands. There's over 1,000 laws. I think there's like 1,200 odd laws. The numbers are relevant to me because I'm not one of the people that go, oh, it's so important that you must abide by that Jewish law. No, you must avoid sin. And sin is far more than the Jewish law because sin is, well, I like to say sin is spelt with a capital I, not a capital S, because sin is all about me, myself, I, putting myself before God, my needs before God. It's all about my desire, my ego, my pride, me. I want that, so I'll steal it. It would be the thought of a sinful person's mind. So theft is because they want the item. A person is violent because they're not getting their way, or because they want to inflict a pain on a person that hurt them or disturbed them in some way. It's all about them. Because if they were selfless, then they wouldn't care about that other person hurting their emotions or whatever it might be. That violence, uh, therefore, has no reason to erupt from them. I don't know of a sin that doesn't begin with yourself. Even, uh, you should have no other God before me. Well, who are you making God then? If you are choosing to have another foreign god, like, I don't know, Buddha or something like that. Buddha never said he was a god, but um, we'll go with trying to think some of the Hindu gods. Hare Krishna, Krishna, for example. Let's say you're a Hare Krishna and Krishna's your god. Well, that's because you want what it is that Krishna provides. It's your desire that drags you, that pulls you towards that particular false god or any other god there might be. In Roman times, we had Jupiter, for example, and some people might be attracted to what Jupiter stood for. So therefore, they, out of their desire, worshipped Jupiter, but it was from their desire, from the things they liked about that particular god. The Roman gods were like that. You could worship any of the gods. You could just worship one of those gods if you wanted. And it was a matter of just pick your favorite god to worship because it's still all about you. Okay, so I don't know of any sin that doesn't in some way include the self. So sin as a whole is putting yourself before God. And there are scriptures that say similar as well. Uh, because God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. Okay, grace, Ephesians 5:8 says, "For by grace you are saved through faith, and that is not of yourselves, it is the gift of God." So if you're saved by grace, it's salvation, right? So God resists the proud and gives salvation to the humble. What's proud? What's pride? Me, my value, me first, my ego. God resists people considering themselves highly. What's humble? I'm merely a servant here to serve God and serve other people, not to be used by other people, not to be subjected to other people, but to serve them on behalf of God. and not serve them as somebody that is ruled by them. No, you're certainly ruled by God, but to do for them on behalf of God. And nothing that, of course, if it's on behalf of God, that goes against God, nothing that goes against God. And allowing yourself to be fully used isn't godly. Mind you, turning the other cheek, which can seem similar, is godly. However, how many times do you have to forgive a person? 70 times 7? Well, that's one way of looking at it. But on the other hand, you forgive them, but do you let them do it to you again? Sure, well, if it's slap you on the cheek, let them slap you on the other cheek. But then, the point being, step away from them. If they're an abusive person, avoid them. Treat them like the church is supposed to treat sinners. Because if you are a willful sinner rather than somebody that has only just turned to God and you haven't learnt godly ways yet and you still haven't had sin dealt with in your life, that's a different story. But somebody that is constantly willfully sinning, there are many verses that say, remove them from your church, have nothing to do with them, don't associate with them, don't communicate with them any longer. Give them a couple of chances to change, express to them the need to change and what their problem is with God. Because if they're causing issues, those issues are issues with God. Sure, they might be issues with you, but having those issues with you, as long as you're walking in a godly way, then those issues are with God. So we need to ascertain what is godly and what is not. Do we say, oh, you've got to stick by the Torah and ignore both Peter and Paul? Or do you say, oh, we've got to stick by Paul, or oh, we've got to stick by Peter? In fact, I think it was Paul that said, don't call yourself a disciple of Apollos or and a disciple of Peter or a disciple of me. Uh, but we are all disciples of Jesus, something along that line. Again, I don't have a Bible in front of me right now, so I'm just talking. Um, don't pick and choose the people who wrote the Bible, and even more so, don't pick and choose specific verses or specific books like, oh, you've got to abide by the law, the Torah. Let's stick to the first 5 books of the Bible and toss the rest out. You might as well be saying that because you're ignoring the majority of the New Testament. Am I saying sin's okay? No. But trying to live by the law is different to avoiding sin. Again, avoiding sin is dealing with the pride that the Torah can't deal with. Does the Torah say, oh, there's a law against pride? Nope, not as far as I know. Because the Torah is a lower level of thing. We are also to deal with other sins like anger, jealousy. These are sins, but they're not under the law. So people that go, oh, you've got to abide by the law. Oh, jealousy is not under the law, so I can be jealous. No. See, they're saying, oh, you've got to abide by the law, so they can justify their lifestyle of only abiding by the law and not going to the higher level of also doing the godly things. Because Christianity is not just about avoiding the sins of the law, but it is also about dealing with all the self issues in life and giving your life to God in a way that you're letting the self go entirely. Peter, Paul, and James, for example, would all start letters to the churches, such as Romans and what are now the books of the Bible, and James and First Peter, Second Peter, etc. They would start them saying, Paul, a doulos of Christ. And in the King James, it's translated to a servant of Christ. But the word doulos means slave. You've heard me say this many times. You've watched my previous messages. So we are totally submitted to God. And as a slave of God, we see no pride. What's the pride of being a slave? Where's the ego? If a slave is punched by one of the slave masters or whatever the guards are called, well, they just stand there and take it. They don't fight back or be flogged. Same thing. We are not ourselves anymore. We're not um, all about me. No, we're now all about God. Here to serve God and to serve people on behalf of God. But again, serving those people is not submitting to them. You might feed the hungry, but you don't do what the hungry tells you to do. Oh, go commit this sin, and you have to submit to me. No, absolutely not. You still need to submit to God first, even though you might feed the hungry. And when you feed the hungry, you use it as an opportunity to tell them about God. Because why did Jesus come? He said in Matthew 1:38, I think it is, and also somewhere in Luke, I think, possibly Mark, that he came to proclaim the gospel, to preach the gospel, to tell people about God and godly things. Well, other than to die for our sins, if that's what his life was all about, and he happened to heal the sick, etc., um, ahoy, ahoy.
Hey, my name is Scott, calling from AML Union and International Committee. This is not a sales call.
Okay, a computer scam call. No, you get that. Uh, anyway, so let's get back to picking and choosing, because that was where I was heading at. So not only do you seek to live a sin-free life, but we are to be higher than that and also have the good things that God um, has, as in Galatians 5, 22 and 23 says, uh, for the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Uh, against such there is no law. So this is what we are required to have, because there was so much in the Bible talking about producing fruit. And does a thorn produce figs, for example? And it's like saying, well, a bad plant doesn't produce good fruit. So if we're producing that good fruit, the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, etc., then we're showing godly things in our life. So our life is to develop those things. The law doesn't develop love, joy, peace, patience, etc. No, we are to be higher. We are to be better than the law. Not, oh, do whatever you want. No, but let's treat the law as the rules of kindergarten. And there's a book in the Bible that says, once I learn the things of childhood, do I need a teacher anymore, etc. And was talking about the law. Again, I should be looking up these verses, but I'm just thinking of it. I wouldn't even know where to look. The point being, I don't need to abide by the rules of kindergarten because I need to abide by the rules of an adult life, even superior to the rules of kindergarten. A kindergarten child doesn't have to drive a car under the speed limit because a kindergarten child can't even drive a car. But we have extra rules and regulations as an adult. We're expected to be even further advanced in a sinless life. So not only do we depart from sin, which is what the law is about, but we also have the fruit of the Spirit. We also have the things that God seeks from our life. And we are to do other things like feed the hungry and take care of the widows, etc., and promote God. The Great Commission, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. There are the things that every Christian is expected to do. And again, if Christ said he came to preach the gospel, and that's what he said he came to do, and we are his disciples, then we are to do that too. Do you turn every conversation to God and godliness? That's what being a Christian is. But do you, on the other hand, say, oh, well, I'll follow Paul but not Peter. I'll follow Peter but not Paul. I'll follow the Torah but ignore grace. Or I live by grace and therefore I don't have to worry about sin. I can do what I want. All those things are putting yourself before God. They're all going, I want to follow Paul, so I'll do it that way. I want to follow Peter, so I'll do it that way. I want to be under the law and not under grace because grace, you've got to have all these good things like love, joy, peace, patience, etc. I don't want that, but I can obey the Sabbath and I can obey not murdering and I can do those legal things. But then again, you can't because even, I'm pretty sure it was Jesus said, no man can keep the law because the law covers even things like what you eat. Can't be grown, two kinds of crop can't be grown in the same field. How do you know you're not eating something from a veggie garden? Unless you grow a single crop yourself and eat that single crop. All I do is grow potatoes and eat potatoes, only potatoes. Nothing else grows in my field. So you can't pick and choose either single scriptures or whole books of the Bible or whole sections of the Bible, like toss out everything Paul said or toss out everything Peter said or toss out the Pentateuch, which is the Torah, the first five books of the Bible. No, don't toss them out. But you can't live specifically by them either, or any other individual verse. Now, we are to live by grace. How do you live by grace? Well, of course, anyone that's been watching my messages knows that grace is far more than unmerited favour. Forget what preachers say, oh, grace is unmerited favour. No, it's not just unmerited favour. That's a small part. Um, I might as well go over Thayer again. Thayer said the word charis. He gave the description of that word. He studied Greek, and the word charis is the word translated as grace. He said that is the merciful kindness by which God, exerting his holy influence upon souls, turns them to Christ, keeps, strengthens, increases them in Christian faith, knowledge, affection, and kindles them to the exercise of the Christian virtues. Well, there's a lot of process in that. It's not just unmerited favour, because that's the merciful kindness part of it. But the rest, by which God, exerting his holy influence upon souls, turns them to Christ. So there's an action in grace that makes you more Christ-like, keeps, strengthens, and increases them in. So you are becoming more strengthened in um, Christian faith, knowledge, affection. So you're gaining a Christian faithfulness, not belief for things. Oh, I'm going to believe for $1 million. No, no, not that kind of faith. And that's not really biblical anyway, because God supplies your needs, and just having desires for the sake of desires isn't really godly anyway, because that's me again. You want something for you. Simple. Um, so God's certainly not going to do something because you want it for you. But if you want that $1 million specifically to put into a charity which will save millions of people, well, that will potentially be a different story. Well, that then relies on a faith for things. But faith here is the Christian faith, as opposed to the Buddhist faith or some other religion, a faith in a religion, or the Catholic faith, or whatever a faith may be. So, um, Christian faith, knowledge, affection. So you are gaining that relationship with God, that faith, and knowledge of God, knowledge in God, knowledge of the Word, and affection. Not that the affection of, oh, I'm affectionate towards this person of the opposite sex or whatever it might be. No, it's loving your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your might, all your soul, all your spirit, everything in you. And love your neighbor as yourself. Maybe even above yourself in some ways. I won't get into that. But that kind of love, loving with godly love. And to what end is this continued process? To produce that fruit of the Spirit, to kindle them to the exercise of the Christian virtues. What are the Christian virtues? Well, again, that love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The fruit of the Spirit. And there are other things as well, like godly wisdom and so on. However, it's basically the fruits of the Spirit, those good things in God. Okay, so don't pick and choose scriptures. Don't stand on one scripture alone. Don't even pick and choose books or writers of the Bible. Stand on grace, because it's through grace you are saved through faith. And of course, that grace is the change that God makes in you. Not you putting in an effort to change either, but let God change you towards his godliness. And if that's not happening, if you're not doing more godly things all the time and talking about God in every conversation or trying to, something's probably wrong. I hope this message bugged you, but not bugged you enough to want to leave, bugged you enough to want to change. I'll wrap up there. Okay. Um, if it was a good message, give it a rating. Rate these messages. I keep asking that and no one's doing it. Um, pass the good ones on to others. Bless you. Govern well. Charis to you.